federal judge has blocked the Trump administration's deployment of National Guard troops to Chicago for now, as tensions on the streets continue to rise. Illinois Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker is out defending protesters.
There are people running around, and that's mayhem on the ground, and that's going to be the excuse to send troops in, or that's going to be the excuse to do more than they're already doing. All I can say is that I'm proud of the people who are peacefully protesting out there and doing the right thing if they want to.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott insists the troop deployment is necessary to restore law and order.
Now, because we have a president who's finally enforcing the laws of the United States, it's only natural, by extension, that if there's a need for that elite National Guard to provide assistance anywhere in the entire country, that it would be the National Guard called upon.
Meanwhile, ICE is facing a slew of assaults and threats. One agent's spouse got this message, which reads in part, "Retribution will come your way eventually." And in Houston, a Halloween display appears to show figures of ICE agents hung in a mock execution. Dr. Sapphire, we're talking about not just ICE agents who we know have been under threat, who have faced organized assaults on their facilities and sniper fire in Texas, to riots from Portland to the Chicago area. But when these threats become so personal, what does that mean to the hearts and the minds of these public servants that also have to get out there and do their jobs every day?
Yeah, I think it's being reported right now that the attacks on them is up like 1,000% over the last couple of years. And these are people who are going out, these are not the highest paying jobs you can get. These are government servants, and all they are doing is trying to protect our country and keep our community safe. Being an ICE official, that's not anti-immigrant. That is pro-community and pro-American. And, one of the things that I find honestly the most disturbing, first of all, people are continuing to demonize ICE. And I've seen people calling them like Nazis and comparing them to like the Gestapo's of Nazism. I mean, we can have conversations about immigration policy without rewriting history entirely. The fact that Nazism was they hunted and they murdered innocents in the absence of law. What ICE does here in the United States is enforce the law using constitutional due process, using the court system. I mean, everything that is happening right now is legal. And to continue to demonize them, I mean, it is just dishonoring the true victims of evil in the past. And all of a sudden, these ICE officials who have taken these jobs to uphold the law, protect our communities, they themselves are now putting themselves at risk, and they're not going to want to do it anymore. And this is going to lead to a more uprising of criminal activity, unsafe communities, and rightfully so. I mean, I would not blame them for leaving their jobs, because if we can't protect them, then yes, they should leave their job. We have to be able to protect them. And if the governors, the mayors are not allowing National Guard or their own police force to protect ICE officials, we're going to lose them all.
I want to talk about just kind of the different realities that it seems to be that our public officials are living in. J.B. Pritzker, they're talking about the protesters, and we in America have a very proud tradition of supporting our protesters and peaceful protest across the nation. But in these cases, we have seen things that look a lot more like riots happening outside of ICE facilities. Does ICE not have the right, and the federal government have the right, to protect the people that are out there doing their jobs?
Right. Well, everyone should be protected, protesters included. And it's really unfortunate that law enforcement has to spend so much of their time dealing with this when they could be protecting and serving communities. Same thing with our federal agents who are having to take so much of their time. I'd also add these ICE agents will continue to do this job because it's a calling and they've got support from the president and the White House. They will continue to do it. The only calculation they make, because they know this is a difficult and dangerous job, is their families. That's what they're most concerned about, is that their families will be safe while they do this job that they signed up for and take the risk, and they're proud to do it. But I would also say this. When Democrats like Pritzker and others, when they say that National Guard or federal agents, when they call them an authoritarian or an invading force, okay, or they say that enforcing the law is somehow the authoritarian Trump regime, let's flash back 5 years ago when many of these governors were more than happy to have, whether it was law enforcement officers or other law enforcement bodies, policing people for going to the park with their children during COVID, surfing in the waters of Malibu during COVID. They were totally fine with having them as their personal mask police, enforcing gatherings of 8 people or less. That was totally fine. But now protecting federal agents, carrying out law and order and protecting federal facilities, now all of a sudden that's authoritarian? Please. This was 5 years ago. Never forget what they did to us during COVID.
Emily, I want to get your take on this. We, of course, have this judge, April Perry. She's a Biden appointee. She's fairly new to the bench, actually. She's only been a federal judge for less than a year. So this is a rather notable decision that she's made out there for that area. Your thoughts on she's essentially questioned the Trump administration's credibility on the issue and pushed back and has been seeking answers about just what precisely the National Guard would be doing on the ground there in the area, how far they would go to go beyond protecting federal facilities. Your thoughts on her ruling?
Yeah, I think that authority is different from power. And I think the authority is squarely vested in the executive branch to indeed augment when local and state law enforcement or decision makers have abdicated their duty. I think it's clear here that why Democrats and liberals and activist judges are so fearful and in their own mental mayhem is because they see that the power has been restored into an executive branch that is executing the mandate of the people. They are terrified that all of a sudden their power to police masks and what your children learn in school and putting men in women's sports, that all of that has been taken away and restored rightfully back into the hands of the people. And I think about when J.B. Pritzker and governors like him, like Gavin Newsom, who fixate on the president as a human instead of in any way acknowledging the constituency Americans that he's aiming to serve and protect. If we can pop up for a second that imagery again, the horrific imagery, I can't get it out of my head, of the effigies hanging in the noose with the coffins next to them in a playground of a undoubtedly taxpayer-paid neighborhood. Are you joking? That is the symbolism and the imagery that people are used to in cartel-ridden South and Central American countries that have an abject corruption that has infused the law enforcement and the administrations there. The fact that this is an American neighborhood is absolutely and patently unacceptable. Where are those leaders in that area to say not on our watch? Because at the end of the day, the risk, God help us, if any of our federal agents or in law enforcement get any more hurt than they already have been, that blood is on their hands.
David, your thoughts?
My thoughts are what keep Tom Homan up at night. And I asked him that question once. We all know him. He's a tough guy. He comes across as a very tough guy, and he is. But what keeps him up at night is not his own safety or his family's safety. It's the 400, how many? I have to look at notes. 470,000 unaccompanied children who came in during the Biden administration. Now, 300,000 of them were lost. They disappeared because of the HHS under Biden was operated terribly. We have just recently found 65,000 reports of unaccompanied kids that had case studies behind them. That is, they were trying to look for these kids that disappeared. Tom Homan is now trying to at least go back with that backlog of the 65,000 to try to find these children. That's what ICE agents are doing in addition to kicking out. You never hear about this, but the guy who's in charge of this entire operation is more concerned about all those kids, how many of them have been trafficked, where they have been trafficked, either sexually or for work. Remember that farm, that marijuana farm in California that was busted? Yes. They got about 340 illegals, and there was a group of 500 protesters, to use Pritzker's absurd word, that were throwing stones at them, et cetera. Well, there were also about a dozen kids that were found there, unaccompanied children working on a marijuana, as slave workers working on a marijuana farm. Those are the children that keep Tom Homan up at night. So think about that when you're calling these people fascists, when you're calling these people evil. These people are fathers of children and grandfathers, et cetera, and they care a lot about the kids that were being trafficked into this country and are still here unaccompanied by their parents.
And worth noting the hundreds and hundreds of sex offenders that they've been bringing into custody over the course in recent months.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.